Yetzi Yaakov Be'er Sheva, and Vayel Charan. Yaakov left Be'er Sheva and he went to Charan. V'yiduyim hadiyukim harabim b'zeh. It's known the very many analysis of this, starting Maamar Hazokim from the Alter Rebbe, V'admor Tzoi, and from the Mittler Rebbe v'chulu. V'echad mehem hu, and one of the analysis about this is Shemesayim Mesa'inin b'psukim b'shavti b'shalom beis avi v'goymer. He concludes the topic of Vayetza Yaakov el beis aviv. He concludes it with the I will return in peace to my father's home. The Even shesamti matzeva, on the stone, the rock that had made a monument, etc. And then he concludes, everything that you will give me, I will give Meiser to you. So the Rebbe is going to explain these different psukim, but the main thing he's going to focus on is on the point of the Vayetze concerning Yaakov, where Yaakov is at, where he's going to. But we need to understand that if Vayetze Yaakov, when it says Vayetze Yaakov, it's not just the beginning of the parsha. It's also the beginning of the above mentioned matter that we were just talking about, the V'shafti v'shalom beis aviv, and the Even, Asher Samti Matzeva, the etc. Shemesayim b'psuk manal, that he concludes in the above mentioned psukim. V'tzarich lahav, we need to understand Maya Shayches ben Vayetze Yaakov. What's the connection between Yaakov going out, La'asiyim, to the conclusion of V'shafti v'goymer, V'evan v'goymer, V'chol sher v'goymer, the return and the rock, etc., and everything, etc. What's the association? What does the going have to do with the returning and the monument and the meiser? Also, we need to understand what he says, that this rock that I placed will be a matzeva, a monument. It'll be a beis alakim, like the pasuk says. How can a rock be a monument, something of such importance and value, etc., etc.? That's attesting to Hashem. That's what the matzeva is about. Second paragraph, the explanation of this is Yaakov, concerning Yaakov, the Mittler Rebbe brings, this was said on Yud Kislev, so that was the day of the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe. Yaakov hu Yud Ekev. Yaakov is a combination of two things, the letter Yud and the word Akev, heel. He draws down the level of Yud, which goes on Spheres HaChachma, as we know that Yud Kei Vav Kei corresponds to the 10 spheres. The Yud goes on the Chachma, because Chachma is a point and a Nekudah, so too is the letter Yud. And that's Reishis HaYishtalshus, it's the beginning of the 10 spheres, and it's also the beginning of the worlds, coming from Atzilus going down. And so that Yud of Yaakov indicates that the Yud, the beginning of Seder Ishtalshus, reaches Ad Lamata Matal B'chinas HaKvayim, until very much below the level of the heels. The Zel Vayetze Yaakov, that's what it says that Yaakov went out. Shuam Shachas HaYud, it's the drawing down of the Yud. מבאר Shava, from the level of Be'er Shava, Vayel Charana, and he will go, and he went to Charan. What's the idea of Charan is, like Chazal said, it's called Charan, that it's Charoin Af Shel Makom Ba'olam. It's the anger of Hashem in the world, the Makom Sheshem Charoin Af Shel Olam. So that's how far Yaakov traveled from the beginning of Seder Ishtalshus all the way down to the lowest levels. In other Maamarim, he explains what the Be'er Shava is, what the seven Midas. Be'er Shava is the well from which they spring in the level of Chachma Bina, or Bina, etc., till it finally reaches till the lowest most levels. So now the Rebbe is going to bring a very interesting, if you will, segue or completely different concept to be able to explain this idea. So this will be understood by prefacing what it says, that I will raise up, David HaMelech says in Tehillim, I will raise up a cup of salvations. We need to understand the idea of the raising up, the lifting up, the making up higher, this cup of salvations. This raising up of the cup is connected with it saying that you will command the Yeshuas of Yaakov. So first of all, we need to identify what is Yeshuas. The Yeshuas who Shin Ayin or Shin Ayin Hey Nahoidin. Yeshuas is either 370 or 375 lights. Yeshua, the root word is from the word Shah, either Sha'ah or Shah Shin Ayin. Shezeu Reishis Eishtalshlos. These 375 lights or 370 lights is the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos. And therefore, either it has to do with Chachma, like we said before, that Chachma, the Yud, is the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos, or it's not even the beginning of Ishtalshlos, the Shinayin Hey Nahoidin, but Lamaila Ishtalshlos, it's even higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, which is Keser, Atik and Arich. Over there is the level of the Shinayin Hey Nahoidin, the level of Yeshuas. The Zeu in Yeshuas, Malashon Sha'ah, this is the idea of Yeshuas from the word Sha'ah, Pana. Sha'ah means that he turned to it. It says that to the carbon of Hevel versus Kayin, he did not Sha'ah, he did not turn. That's the idea of the Shin Ayin Hey Nahoidin. Why is the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos, or higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, the idea of turning? So he says, Shezeu Inyan HaTafnis HaRishoyna. That is the first turn. Der erster Ker in Yiddish, Shel Atzmus Ein Sof Yizbarach La'olmus, of Hashem's very essence, turning to deal with and connect with the worlds. The Oz Aimer, and then he says, Save Yeshuas Yaakov, being that it's the first turn of Hashem to the worlds, that's why it's either the level that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlos or the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos. So then he says, Save Yeshuas Yaakov. What Save Yeshuas Yaakov? The Tzave Humaloshin Tzavsa v'chibur. Tzave is from the expression that it's a togetherness, it's a joining. Shemechaber u'mamshich inyan ha'yeshuas lamata. He joins and draws down the idea of salvations down here below. Afilu b'chinas ekev. Even into the level of heel. So this level of Yeshuas, this level that's either the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos or higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, needs to be joined down here, and that's the same idea of Yaakov, Yud, coming into Ekev, into Rakvayim. Hinei Tzavi Yeshuas, hu inyan hakli lekabolas hamshachas ha-Yeshuas. This Tzavi Yeshuas is the vessel through which one receives these Yeshuas. Based on what we just now explained about Tzavi Yeshuas Yaakov, now we can understand the first pasuk we mentioned in this paragraph about Kois Yeshuas Esa, I will raise up a cup of Yeshuas. The cup should be able to receive and accept these salvations. You need to prepare the cup itself. The cup has to be ready and able to receive it. And what is that readying of the cup to receive that level of the Yeshua, of the Amshach that comes from higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, or the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlos? That's the idea of the raising of the cup. Sheba Kais Yeshuas Esa, that in it you have the level of the cup of Yeshuas I will raise up. It says on the next page, this will be understood according to what's brought down in the well-known Maamar of the Middler Rebbe, that's entitled to understand the idea of the silver goblet. That it says over there that Yosef HaTzadik hid in the sack of Binyamin, he hid over there a silver goblet. He explains the difference between the silver goblet that's found specifically in the sack of Binyamin, who the Torah describes as Hakotan. When it talks about the silver goblet, it says it was placed in the sack of the minor, the one who is Binyamin, the minor one, meaning the youngest. The difference between that silver goblet and what David HaMelech says, I will raise up a cup of Yeshua's, though both of them are vessels, the Gevia and the Kais Yeshua's are both Kalim. In the Bechol Zeis HaGevia Nimtza Bam Tachas HaKotten, the goblet finds itself in the sack of the youngest, meaning the smallest level, which indicates Hamshacham Elmailo Lamato. It indicates drawing down from above to below. It comes from Yosef HaTzadik, like we'll soon explain, and it's placed in the sack of the small one, of the youngest one. The Kais Yeshua is Hagba, as opposed to the cup of Yeshua's. David HaMelech says in Tillim, we need to raise up the cup of Yeshua's. מבאר Shaman explains over there, the Zeh Hefresh ben David Yosef. This is the difference between the two of them. The Kais Yeshua says, Amar David al Midasai Shubechinas Malchus. A cup of salvations I will raise up, David said about his own level, that he's the level of Malchus. As we know that David is from the Daled Ragle HaMerkava, it's called Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David HaMelech. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov is the Midas of Zah, specifically Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, but in general it includes Zah. And then David HaMelech is the level of Malchus. So David HaMelech says about his level, the level of Malchus, we need to raise myself up. Why does it have to be raised up? The Ragla Yardis Mavis, because Malchus, its legs descended to death, since Malchus descends into the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah. So therefore, to be able to connect with the Yeshuas, it needs to be raised up out of that situation. So therefore, there has to be the idea of I will raise up. Because that's the raising up of the cup. That's David HaMelech situation. What about Binyamin? Binyamin is the other direction, we said. We said it's Amshacha from above to below. As opposed to the goblet by Binyamin, Zeu Shal Yosef Shutzad Inyan Tzadik Elyon Zeir Ampin. The goblet belonged to Yosef. Yosef is known as the upper tzaddik, as opposed to Binyamin is called Tzadik Tachten, which is Zeir Ampin, the Midas. Protis Yosef in Yasoid, specifically more, Yosef represents the idea of Yasoid. That's why Yosef is called Yosef HaTzadik, and Tzadik is Yasoid Olam. So that's the Tzadik Elyon. This Gavia that Yosef brought down to Binyamin, who's also called a Tzadik Tachten, is Amshacha from Zah to below. The Yosef wa Majbir Bar L'chal Aretz. Yosef is the one that gives food to the entire earth. So in other words, Yosef's level is the level of Mashpia. That's the true idea of a Mashpia. Here he says a very interesting point. You could say Malchus is also Mashpia. That's Ragla Yerdis Mavis. He says that's not the true idea of Mashpia. Yosef, Yisoid, Zah, that's the true idea of Mashpia. She'ena yored le'inyan ha'mekabel b'hashpa'asai ela mashpia memekoimai. A mashpia doesn't turn and become the mushpa and the mekabel. It doesn't, a teacher does not all of a sudden become childlike in the classroom. He can sometimes use some childlike activities, etc., but the teacher must always be removed from those that he is teaching. That's why we have all types of halachas about kavod, etc. You have to honor. The mashpia has to be above the mushpoim. So Yisoid, Yosef Tzadik Elyon, that gives the Gevia HaKesef to Binyamin, who is Hakoten, he is being mashpia from his place. Since he's being mashpia from his place, it's not like Malchus that needs to be raised up. That Malchus becomes invested in Bia. It remains. Zah, Yisoid remains in its place. Therefore, there's no need for the Gevia Kesef that Yosef was mashpia to Binyamin to have any type of raising up. Because on his own he's already raised up and high and removed. Just the opposite. It is found in the sack of Binyamin, the minor one, that he could draw it down below and still retain his elevated state. So there's no reason for the elevation. So David, which is the idea of Malchus, needs the elevation. The Gevia Kesef is the opposite. It's about drawing down from above to below. We can connect it. What the Alter Rebbe says in Torah on this pasuk, that there is one kruv, one of the kruvim that were on the Aron from one end, and another kruv of the two kruvim that were on the Aron was at the other end. So the idea of the kruv echad mikatzim mizeh and kruv echad mikatzim mizeh, so he says the katza is the operative word over here. When we're talking about katza, we're talking about ends of something. What are the ends? The kruv echad mikatzim mizeh zeu inyan zeh rampin. That the kruv from one end, that's the inyan of this midas of atzilus, the kruv echad mikatzim mizeh zeu inyan malchus, and the other end of the kruv, that's the other kruv, that's from the other end, that's malchus. And he's going to explain how each one of these is an end to a different level. The Zeir Ampin Pratis Bechinas Yisoid Harewa Darga Achroina Bein Sof. Zeir Ampin, and specifically the level of Yisoid, that is the final level of the Ein Sof. So that's the Kotza Mizeh. It's the end from this side. It's the end of the Ein Sof. That's one end. I mean, when we picture it in our mind, it works differently than the Aron. By the Aron, when we're talking about Kruv Echad Mikatzim Mizeh, Kruv Echad Mikatzim Mizeh, we're talking about the two ends of the Aron. But over here, the ends mean something totally different. So being that it's the end of the Ein Sof, true, it's the end, Avali Yoise Ein Sof, since it's infinite, its beginning, its middle, and its bottom, everything is infinite. Therefore, the Kruv Echad Mikatzim Mizeh is considered a high level. You don't need to raise it up, and as it is, it can influence biyah and it comes from above to below, and biyah, it needs no help. It needs not to be lifted up. Malchus is the beginning of the world, so it's the end of the worlds from bottom up. It's the upper end, the highest most level of the end of the world's ending above. It's called below in comparison to the level that's higher than it. And just like we say about the Kruv Echad Mikatzim Mizeh and Kruv Echad Mikatzim Mizeh, in a similar vein, V'cheinu being in a hefresh ben kois Yeshuis will give Ya'kesav, so too it's in the difference between the cup of Yeshuis to the silver goblet. The Gvia Kesav will bechinas Yesoid is al Madreya Gevoya. The silver goblet, that's the level of Yesoid, that's a high level. Shemakabel kol ha'oros v'giluim el yonim. It receives all the spiritual and high revelations and lights. Umashpia ad lamata mata, and it gives it over to all the way below. Just like a cup is meant to be drunk from. You pour things in the cup, and then the person can drink from it. Okay. And also, this is also hinted specifically in the type of cup that indicates even more this idea. Rashi explains that the word gavia is from the word height. Kois aruch. I think in English they call it a flute. It's a thin, long type of cup that shows It indicates the descending very much below. So it's about, the Gvia Kesef is about coming from above to below. Mashenkin, because Yeshua is opposed to the cup of Yeshua's Malchus Shetzorach, there has to be the raising up of it. There's a well-known metaphor about this. Like two people standing. One is at the top of the mountain and one is at the bottom of the mountain. So that they should join. Either the one on top has to descend below, or the one below has to ascend to the top of the mountain. Or another option is they can meet halfway. Each one will meet up and reach at the middle of the mountain. Because that's the idea of raising up the cup. That's like meeting at the halfway, and then the top can come back in. You want to have the Yud Ekev. You want to have the Shtalshalos Shinayin Heinoirim, the Yeshuas should come down. So you need to raise the cup, Kais Yeshua says, so to be able to receive the Yeshua in it, the level of Yaakov in it. And where do they meet up exactly? Where do they join? That's the sphere of Yisoid. Yisoid is the sphere that has to do with Hashpah and the joining of Mashpia and Makabel. Shezeu Indian Kikoil Bashmaim of Va'ara. It's like in the Maamar of Basel Lagani. We explained that Kikoil Bashmaim Va'ara goes on spheres of Yisoid. You have L'cha Hashem Hagedullah, that's Chesed, Hagevura, Tiferes, V'Netzach, V'Ha'oit. Then it says Kikoil Bashmaim Va'ara. Kikoil Bashmaim Va'ara is the level of Yisoid. Why is Kichayil Bashamayim V'Aretz the level of Yisoid? Shemayim, that goes on the spheres above, on Chesed Gvura, Shemayim, and the entire Zah. Aretz is the lowest sphere that's going on Malchus. Kichayil Bashamayim V'Aretz means the Eskalus, the joining, like the Targum Yonis Ben Azil says, the Achid B'Shamayim V'Adam. It joins the heavens and the earth. So Yisoid is that joint, that connector between the higher part and the lower part. Therefore, again, like we said before, the Gevia Kesef, which is the level of Yosef Tzadik Elyon, the level of Yisoid, there is no need for raising up. We're holding the second line on page 1 Gimel. Therefore, it says in the statement of the Medrash, David Yivarech Birchas Hamazon, when Mashiach comes, specifically who will lead the benching at the Sudas HaLevyasan and the Shoyer Habar, it says David HaMelech. How come? Why specifically David? Shari Los Lava Yeh Bechinas Kaisi Revaya. When Mashiach comes, it says, my cup will be overflowing. The Kais Bechinas David Malchus, the Kais, which is the level of David, which is the Spheres of Malchus, Yikabel Mebchinas Revoya will receive from the level of Revoya. The word Revoya is the gematria, the numerical equivalent of 221. Inyan Arich. Arich, if you just use the letters that are pronounced, not the Yud, which is not pronounced, so the gematria is Reish Chof Aleph. In other words, when Mashiach comes, there'll be Kaisi Revoya, that the cup of Malchus will be in a level of getting from Arich Ampin. It'll be getting from higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. Shiyum Shach B'Malchus, that the Arich will come down to Malchus. The Davke Achshav Malchus Ibedargish Etzorachli is Kaisi Choice Esa. Only now Malchus in such a level that you have to raise it up because it's Ragla Yerdis Mavis. Avallah said lovely, but in the future when Mashiach comes in Mitzadagili, the Arich is Galva Malchus, because the revelation of Arich that will become revealed in Malchus, won't need to receive from Zeir Ampin, therefore in the future, David, specifically David, is the one that's going to make Birchas Hamazon, because he is going to be now the Mashpia instead of the Makabel. Like we always speak about Eish Chayla Teres Baila, Eish Chayla is going on Malchus, and that's going to be the crown, that's going to be the Mashpia to what the Mashpia was now, which is Zeir Ampin.